Well, g'day everybody, and welcome to what I wouldn't call really a tutorial, but some tips on practicing landing and how to learn to land properly in flight sim. I get quite a lot of questions from people saying, "Oh, how do you land? How do you always get your landing right? When should I be descending? What should I be doing? What's the best way to land the aircraft?" So, what I thought I would do is run through some of my hints and tips in regards to practicing and learning to land in flight sim, using a combination of sort of flight sim manipulations and sort of real world procedures. Now, I just need to make sure that you guys know that I do not I may not use a complete real world procedures here while I'm landing and stuff, but what I will do is give you some hints and tips on how you can practice landing and get used to how it feels and how it looks to land at the airport, at an airport, especially for airports that don't have any visual guidance or anything like that and you're doing it all visually. So what I've done is I've set myself up at Friday Harbour, which is Kilo Foxtrot Hotel Romeo in Washington. This is the one that I fly out of for NeoFly. And what we're going to do is we're going to set up a sort of we're just going to do a standard pattern and a standard circuit. Now, the one thing that I want to point out is the reason why I have set myself up at this airport is because it has Papi Lights, and Papi are going to, or Papi 2 this one has, they're going to help you learn to see what a correct approach is, and I'll explain that as we get into the air. So the first thing that we're going to do is just jump out on the runway. Now you might wonder why I've set it to sort of 6:30 in the morning. I'll explain that as well. I've set it to 6:30 in the morning because it gives you the opportunity to see the Papi Lights a lot better. Now, what are Papi Lights? Well, here we go. I'll just line this up, and I'll put the I'll line this up, and then I'll put the park brake on right there, and we'll go into external view, into drone mode. There we go, and I will take you for a little bit of a spin. All right, if I can just get the old droney working. All right, so what we've got is you can see these two lights here, these two lights in the middle of the strip there, and you can see them changing between white and red. And it's going to white. Now, the lower I go down, it goes to red. The higher I go up, it goes to white. So let me explain what the Papi Lights do. They're basically a guidance. They are basically a guidance to guide you into the threshold and the landing point of a runway. If those lights are both white, so the left and the right are both white, it means that you are approaching too high. If I go down, if they are both red, it means that you are too low on your approach. If the left one is red and the right one is white, then that basically indicates that you're on the perfect slope to bring the aircraft in and land on the landing threshold. Now, these work for miles out. Unfortunately, with flight sim, sometimes in the daylight, these are a little bit harder to see. And that is the reason why, see, we are good for landing here. And that is the reason why I've set up at this particular time of the day or of the morning. So you can do this at morning and you can do it at evening, but you do need a little bit of light as well, guys. And the reason why you do need a little bit of light is because what we want to do is we want to practice what the runway looks like from a perspective view as you're landing the aircraft. Just going to go flaps, one stage of flaps for takeoff. I'm going to put some power in, and I'm going to get this aircraft up into the pattern, and then we're going to talk about doing we're going to do a long approach, and the long approach will give me a little bit of extra time to show you guys what I mean by using the Papi Lights to learn what the runway looks like. So let's get this little beast in the air, and up we go. Lovely, thank you. And let's climb out at about 70 knots. We'll bring our flaps up. We're going to climb out to around about 500 feet. Once we get to about 500 feet, which is or 500 feet above the runway is actually sitting at 100 feet above sea level anyway. But once we climb out to say 500 or 600 feet, then we're going to do a left turn. We're going to keep hold of the runway heading as we fly. We're going to maintain the runway heading, and we're going to do a climbing turn to a crosswind leg, which is basically turning left. We're doing a left traffic pattern here, and we're going to climb to 1,100 feet or thereabouts. It doesn't matter while you're practicing landing, but you want to be around 1,000 feet for your approach. So I always advise you kind of get yourself to about 1,000 feet. So we're going to climb out here. We're going to continue climbing out on our crosswind. Then we're going to turn downwind. And that will be a left turn to turn downwind. And I'm going to trim the aircraft. I'm going to bring the throttle down. And I'm going to trim the aircraft so that we are flying relatively level. I'm just going to manipulate the nose a little bit as I go, just with my yoke, just so that we don't gain too much altitude or lose too much altitude while we turn. So we are now turning downwind of the runway. Now you want to do this. You're going to do this quite a few times because you're going to do touch and goes when you're practicing your landing anyway, to give you the best opportunity to do as many as you possibly can. Now what I like to do, so I'm just going to trim the aircraft a little bit. I'm going to bring the throttle down. I'm going to bring the nose down and keep trimming the aircraft. Try and maintain about 1,000 feet above the runway. So that's 1,100 feet in this case. And you can see we're running parallel with the runway. And this is our downwind leg. Now what I would normally do is before this little hill here is where I would normally turn on the pattern. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to go out and go around so that we have a long approach. We're just going to continue to turn, and I'm going to let the aircraft start descending at around 300 to 500 feet per minute. Normally I would find maybe about 350 feet per minute would be the better approach. And as I said, we're doing a long approach here. So the reason why I want to do a long approach is because I want you guys to see the Papi and to have plenty of time to actually see what the runway looks like. And you'll see what I mean when I talk about what the runway looks like. Just going to bring him around and line him up. There is our runway. You can see our Papi lights. At this point in time, we have one, and I'm just going to pause. There we go. At this particular point in time, you can see we have one left, a left red, and a right white. That means that we are on the perfect slope and the perfect height as we come down to land where we need to land on the threshold. This is why I brought you to this airport and why I set it to this particular time of day. Alright, let's unpause again, and we will continue. Now I'm going to bring a little bit of throttle in. Just bring the nose of the aircraft up a little bit, and to bring my speed up a little bit. And what we're trying to do now is line ourselves up. Now we are too low now because we have too red, and now we are pretty well perfect there. So we probably want to go down at about 300 feet per minute. And you can see we have one red, one white, which means that we are at the correct height for our approach. And what we're doing is we're just maintaining the aircraft, using a little bit of throttle to maintain our speed, to maintain our height, and like our climb and our descent rate, and using the trim to trim the aircraft a little bit as we come in. So at the moment we are on a perfect trajectory to land on the runway. I'm just going to pause again, and we're going to have a look down at that. Alright, so we've got one red, one white. Now, not all airports have Papi Lights. Not all airports have VASI or t-vasi. So what you need to do when you're learning to fly is you need to learn to visually look at the runway and work out what the perspective of the runway looks like when you are landing at a correct angle, which is what we are doing now. So we're at a correct height for our approach, and this is what the runway looks like. Now, this is a shorter runway, so a longer runway would extend a little bit further and be a little bit more narrow at the very end of the runway. But we're looking for that perspective. And it's learning that perspective that helps you sort of identify coming into a runway that doesn't have any visual guidance like the Papi 2, the Papis, the t-vas, or the VASI lights. It allows you to know that you are on the correct approach for that runway. Now, obviously, not all runways are the same. Some runways have trees really close to the threshold, so you need to come in on a steeper descent. But this will allow you to train your eyes and your brain to understand what an approach to a runway looks like and what that runway looks like if you are at the correct angle. And what we'll do is we're going to come in too high on the next one, and then we're going to come in too low so that you can actually see the difference in perspective. All right, just going to get my feet on the rudder pedals, and I'm going to unpause this. Okay, so we're coming in now. We're coming in. We're still on the correct. We're still on the correct slope. We're looking at what the threshold of the runway looks like, and to me at the moment it looks pretty good. So I'm just sort of training my mind to understand what that looks like. And we are now too high. Okay, so let's just have a quick squiz at that. Now we're too high, and you can see the perspective of the runway has completely changed in comparison to what it looked like when we were actually on the right approach path. So again, worth noting. So now we know that we're too high and we need to bring the aircraft down. So what we would do is we would throttle down a little. I'm just trying to sort of do this. I'm trying to do this with all the pausing and everything. So we're still too high, and now we are correct. So now we are on the correct slope, and the runway's looking relatively decent again. A little bit more throttle in, and now we are too low. But at this particular point in time, it doesn't really matter because we know that we are going to hit the runway. Well, not hit the runway, but we know we're going to successfully reach the runway for our landing, and everything's going to be all right. So I'm going to bring the flaps up one stage, and we're going to do a touch and go and take off again. Once we're at 60 knots, going to rotate, bring the aircraft up, and we're going to do another circuit. So I will see you guys when I get back into the next approach. And what we're going to do is we're going to approach the airport too high and see what the perspective of the runway looks like then. Okay, so here we are coming in for an approach, and as you can see, we've got two white VASI. But the more important thing to look at here is to actually look at the perspective of the runway as we're coming in and how it actually looks. In regards to the runway, looks a lot longer than what it did previously, if you remember what it looked like previously, and I'll probably bring up a shot here to show you what it looked like when we were on the correct approach path. But the runway looks a lot longer and it looks a lot narrower at the landing end, and you can see just with our Papi that we are way too high. So that's a good indication again of how it feels, or how the runway looks and how it feels visually to come in too high. So we are coming in too high. I'm still coming in too high, and I'm doing this on purpose. So still coming in too high, still coming in too high, Still coming in too high, and at this point in time it looks like we're basically going to get down there and we're either going to be going way too fast for a landing or we're going to nose into the ground unless we do something like a slip, which I will do at some point in time in another video. What I'm going to do is I'm going to bring my flaps up and I'm going to put power in the aircraft and I'm going to contact the tower and I'm going to say Cessna November Yankee Alpha going round, and we'll go around, and the next one will come in on a too low approach. Alright, so now we are doing an approach and we're too low. As you can see on our approach we have 2 red, which is indicating that we are too low. Now on a normal Papi with 4 lights as opposed to a Papi 2 with 2 lights, then there's a saying that says 4 red, you're dead, meaning that you are going to hit the ground before you even hit the runway, before you even get to the runway. And that is what that's telling us. So let's have a look at the perspective of this as a too low approach in comparison with our too high approach, which I'll put up on the screen, and our perfect approach. And just get used to how that actually looks. Now, if you find yourself in this situation and you're in the situation where you know there's no lighting to help you land on the runway and stuff, this is where visually understanding what the runway looks like really helps you land. Now, one of the other tips that I like to sort of give as well is I always focus on my landing point on the runway, and that's my focal point when I'm coming in to land. And that allows me to do everything that I need to control the aircraft with a very quick glances down at my instrumentation to make sure that my speed, as you can see, I'm going too slow here, that I'm still descending, that my speed is right and all that type of stuff. But focusing on the point on the runway where I actually want to land the aircraft. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to recover this and I'm going to land the aircraft. I'm going to put in a little bit of throttle. I'm going to bring us up until we're on the right slope, which is about there. And I'm going to visually select the point on the runway where I want to land the aircraft, and I'm going to use that point as my visual guidance coming in. Just quickly having a glance to make sure that the aircraft's not going too fast, and that everything is okay. I've got my visual point on the runway where I actually want to touch down. I'm going to bring my throttle down a little bit and bring that in and bring the nose of the aircraft up a little bit. And that was a little bit of a fast approach because I did have to recover that from being too low. So there you go. All right, let's just slow him up, put some flaps up. And as you can see, I'm practicing this in practically zero wind. I would suggest that you set your weather to 0 wind for practicing this type of approach. And this is a really good way to continue just to do circuits and actually get used to, number one, how the runway looks visually outside of your window, and number two, get used to controlling the speed of the aircraft and controlling your descent and your ascent rate using your throttle. I hope that this helps you out and gives you a little bit of an idea on a really good way, or some tips on a really good way to practice learning to land your aircraft, and that's by using those Papi Lights. So I would suggest somewhere like Friday Harbour, which is where I am, which is Kilo Foxtrot Hotel Romeo. Head out here, set it to 6:30 in the morning or whatever, just to give you that little bit of visual on the with the Papi Lights and stuff, because sometimes they can be a little bit hard to see just in broad daylight. Some of them are alright, but most of them are pretty crap actually in the game at the moment. So but yeah, that's my sort of hints and tips on practicing to land the aircraft. You still have to remember to maintain the sort of landing protocols that you use. Throttle, using engine power to control your descent, and how fast or how slow you're descending, and using the pitch of the aircraft to maintain a vertical speed and stuff, or to maintain sort of a pitch towards the runway. But that kind of gives you a bit of an idea. And if you grabbed yourself a Cessna, just grab yourself a little, grab yourself the Cessna 152 here, or the 172, and just spent a little bit of time somewhere like Friday Harbour, just practicing doing circuits and practicing your landing, you will start to find that when you start landing the aircraft, out on airstrips, out on other runways and stuff that don't have any visual aids or anything, you will actually start to get really used to landing it, and really used to even feeling. I know it's a bit hard to feel in a sim, but even and when you're landing a real aircraft, you can feel what the aircraft is actually doing. But I mean, getting the feeling of using the controls as you come down to keep yourself lined up, using your rudder pedals to help keep your nose aligned and stuff like that, as well as getting used to the airspeed and the way the aircraft wants to feel at certain airspeeds and stuff like that. So I hope, guys, I really hope that this has given you, some indication or some idea on a good way to help you practice landing and get better at landing at runways and stuff, and to actually visually understand how you're going on an approach to an airport that doesn't have any visual aids. So if it has helped, please hit like, guys. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, please subscribe. Don't forget that if you want to see me play other games and stuff outside of simulation, it could be anything from Soda Story to Way of the Hunter to anything, then head over to my new second channel, which is Simidium Extra, which has only just been launched, and please subscribe and follow there as well. I will see you guys next time. Thank you very much for watching. Bye.